Well, this is live from New Delhi. You're watching special broadcast on DD India. DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhatt and with me is my colleague Ramesh Ramachandran. And today is the concluding day of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Guyana visit, marking yet another significant milestone in Prime Minister Modi's diplomatic outreach. Prime Minister Modi will be addressing a special session of the Guyanese Parliament.
Indeed, now it's the first visit to Guyana by an Indian Prime Minister in 56 years. Prime Minister Modi's address to Guyana's Parliament will be his 14th such speech to a foreign legislature, giving him the distinction of being the Indian Prime Minister with the most addresses to foreign lawmakers.
Absolutely. And we will be taking you live to Georgetown in Guyana as we track very, very closely Prime Minister Modi's engagements of the day too and much more.
Indeed. We'll be joined by subject experts to talk about the significance of the visit and overall deliverables. So let's begin.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address a special session of Guyana's Parliament, as we just told you, marking yet another very important milestone when it comes to diplomacy under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And remember, this will be the 14th occasion when Prime Minister Modi will speak on behalf of the people of India in the parliaments of foreign nations.
Now, he holds the distinction of being the Indian Prime Minister with the highest number of addresses to foreign parliaments. His addresses, which transcend continents, are a testament to India's growing influence on the global stage.
Absolutely, Ramesh. And Prime Minister Modi's 14th address to the foreign parliaments are double the number of addresses by former Prime Minister of India, Manmohan Singh, who had delivered 7 such addresses during his tenure. In fact, former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had addressed foreign legislatures 4 times during her tenure, while before that, former Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru did it 3 times.
And Rajiv Gandhi and Atal Bihari Vajpayee delivered 2 such addresses, while others such as Morarji Desai and P.V. Narasimha Rao addressed just once.
Prime Minister Modi has delivered speeches in legislative chambers across the world, from Americas to Europe and transcending from Africa and then from Australia to Asia as well. In fact, if we recall, in 2014, Prime Minister Modi addressed the Parliament of Australia and Fiji.
In Asia, he has addressed a joint session of Bhutan's Parliament and Nepal's Constituent Assembly in the same year. In 2015, he addressed the British Parliament, the National Assembly of Mauritius, and parliaments of Sri Lanka, Mongolia and Afghanistan.
That's right, Ramesh. And he's also addressed a joint session of the US Congresses not once but twice. In 2016 and then in 2023, where Prime Minister Modi addressed the Parliament of Uganda in 2018 and the Parliament of Maldives in 2019.
Now, India and Guyana marked a significant milestone by signing 10 MOUs to strengthen their ties in hydrocarbons, agriculture and pharmaceuticals.
And yes, and this is something which highlights the diversification, or diversifying crude oil sources. Also, we're looking at promoting affordable generic medicines and expanding India's UPI and RuPay systems to Guyana.
Now, these agreements aim to boost bilateral trade, energy security and digital inclusion, marking a new chapter in India-Guyana relations.
India and Guyana are forging a historic partnership as Prime Minister Narendra Modi embarks on his landmark visit to the Caribbean nations. This visit underscores the deepening ties between the two countries, bound by shared values and mutual interests. Prime Minister Modi and President Dr. Irfaan Ali engaged in comprehensive talks focusing on key areas such as defense, energy, health, pharmaceuticals, telemedicine, Ayurveda and capacity building.
भारत की एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी में गयाना की अहम भूमिका होगी। इस संदर्भ में लॉन्ग टर्म पार्टनरशिप के लिए एक खाका तैयार किया जाएगा। इस विषय पर आज किए जा रहे एमओयू से हमारा सहयोग और सुदृढ़ होगा।
Strengthening this robust partnership, India and Guyana signed several agreements across critical sectors, signaling a shared vision for growth and development. MOU on cooperation in hydrocarbon sector, MOU for bilateral cooperation in the field of agriculture and allied sectors, Cultural Exchange Program 2024 to 2027, MOU for recognition of Indian pharmacopoeia, MOU for implementation of Jan Aushadhi scheme, MOU on cooperation in the field of medical products, India-STAC MOU on cooperation in the field of sharing successful digital solutions, MOU for enabling deployment of UPI-like system in Guyana, MOU for cooperation in collaboration in field of broadcasting, MOU between National Defence Institute Guyana and Rashtriya Raksha University, Gujarat.
हम दोनों देशों के कृषि अनुसंधान संस्थानों के बीच सहयोग बढ़ाने पर भी सहमत हुए। कृषि के क्षेत्र में आज किए जा रहे एमओयू से हमारे प्रयासों को बल मिलेगा। भारत फार्मा प्रोडक्ट्स के लिए गयाना का महत्वपूर्ण स्रोत है। हम फार्मा एक्सपोर्ट्स बढ़ाने के साथ साथ गयाना में जन औषधि केंद्र बनाने पर भी काम करेंगे।
Prime Minister Modi celebrated the enduring cultural connections between the two nations, emphasizing the cultural exchange program that will continue until 2027. He also hailed President Dr. Irfaan Ali as a true brand ambassador of India, reflecting the close bond shared by both leaders.
राष्ट्रपति इरफान अली स्वयं भारतीय समुदाय के बहुत बड़े ब्रांड एम्बेसडर हैं। आज हम दोनों देशों के बीच 2027 तक कल्चरल एक्सचेंज एग्रीमेंट पर सहमति बनी है। इससे हमारे पीपल टू पीपल टाइज और मजबूत होंगे।
Dr. Irfaan Ali acknowledged India's expertise in vaccines, urban development and agriculture, highlighting these as key areas of collaboration. Praising Prime Minister Modi's leadership, he called him a champion among leaders for his significant contributions to the developing world.
You are a champion among leaders. You have led incredibly. You have shown the light to the developing world, and you have created a development matrix and framework that many are adopting in their own country, and much of it is relevant to us here in Guyana.
In a heartwarming gesture, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Ali participated in the Ek Ped Maa Ke Naam initiative by planting a sapling in Georgetown. Adding to the significance of the moment, President Ali was joined by his grandmother and mother-in-law, symbolizing respect for maternal bonds and shared values. With Siddharth Bardwaj, Bureau Report, DD India.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Guyana on the last leg of his three-nation tour was conferred the Order of Excellence by Guyana's President Mohamed Irfaan Ali. The Commonwealth of Dominica also conferred its highest national award, which is the Dominica Award of Honor, on India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We take a look at all these foreign prestigious honors bestowed on India's Prime Minister.
Another international recognition for India's Prime Minister, Guyana and Dominica conferred their top awards on Prime Minister Narendra Modi for his contributions during the COVID-19 pandemic and his exceptional contributions to the global community and efforts in strengthening bilateral ties with the two Caribbean nations. The Prime Minister was conferred the Order of Excellence by Guyanese President Irfaan Ali, while Sylvanie Burton, President of the Commonwealth of Dominica, conferred the highest national award, Dominica Award of Honor, on Prime Minister Narendra Modi for his statesmanship, his commitment to strengthening India and Dominica ties. Barbados has also announced to honor the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi with the prestigious Honorary Order of Freedom of Barbados. Earlier, the Indian Prime Minister was also conferred Nigeria's Grand Commander of the Order of the Niger. The prestigious distinction makes him only the second foreign dignitary to receive it, a testament to his global standing and leadership. These latest awards are yet another feather in his cap. Over the years, PM Modi has been honored by countries and organizations around the world for his exceptional leadership and contributions. Some of these awards include: in July this year, PM Modi officially received Russia's most prestigious civilian honor, the Order of St. Andrew the Apostle, which was bestowed upon him in 2019 2019. The award recognizes PM Modi's distinguished contribution to developing a privileged strategic partnership between Russia and India and fostering friendly ties between the two countries. On March 22, 2024, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was conferred the Order of Druk Gyalpo, Bhutan's highest civilian decoration, by the King of Bhutan in a public ceremony at Thimphu. On 25th August 2023, the Indian Prime Minister was conferred with the Grand Cross of the Order of Honour by President Katerina Sakeleropoulou of Greece. On July 13, 2023, PM Modi was conferred with France's highest award, the Grand Cross of the Legion of Honour in Paris. On June 25, 2023, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi conferred the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi with its highest civilian award, the Order of the Nile in Cairo. On May 22, 2023, PM Modi was conferred the highest honour of Fiji, the Companion of the Order of Fiji, in recognition of his global leadership. Only a handful of non-Fijians have received this honour to date, the Prime Minister's office had said back then. On December 21, 2020, the US President Donald Trump conferred the highest decoration, the Legion of Merit, Degree Chief Commander, to PM Modi. On August 24, 2019, PM Modi was conferred the King Hamad Order of Renaissance during his visit to Bahrain in recognition of his efforts to strengthen bilateral relations with the Gulf nation. PM Modi was the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Bahrain. On August 24, 2019, PM Modi was honoured with the UAE's highest civilian award, the Order of Zayed, in recognition of his pivotal role in building the strategic relationship between the two countries. The award has earlier been bestowed on world leaders like the Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Chinese President Xi Jinping. On June 8, 2019, Prime Minister Modi was conferred with Maldives' highest honour, the Rule of Nishan-Uzaydin, during his state visit to the country. The most honourable order of the Distinguished Rule of Nishan-Uzaydin is the Maldives' highest honour accorded to foreign dignitaries. On February 10, 2018, PM Modi was conferred the Grand Collar of the State of Palestine, the highest Palestinian honour for foreign dignitaries. On April 3, 2016, during his visit to Saudi Arabia, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was conferred Saudi Arabia's highest civilian honour, the King Abdulaziz Sash. Apart from the highest civilian honours, PM Modi has also been conferred with several awards by prestigious organisations across the globe. In 2019, PM Modi was conferred the Global Goalkeeper Award by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. The first ever Philip Kotler Presidential Award was given to the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2019. This award is offered annually to the leader of a nation. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was conferred with the Champions of the Earth Award 2018 for his policy leadership by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Champions of the Earth is the highest UN honour in the field of environment. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was conferred with the prestigious Seoul Peace Prize for 2018. It is awarded biannually. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is a people's leader, dedicated to solving their problems and improving their well-being. Indian Prime Minister has ushered in a paradigm shift in governance that has led to inclusive, development-oriented and corruption-free governance. With Bureau Inputs, DD India.
All right, let's take you live to Georgetown, where my colleague Siddharth Bharadwaj is standing by. Siddharth, we are, less than 30 minutes away from the Prime Minister's special address to the Parliament of Guyana. Talk to us about the much anticipated speech by the Prime Minister and also the other engagements to follow.
Hi, Ramesh. Definitely. First of all, it's a very significant moment, when that Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be addressing the Guyanese Parliament, which certainly showcase India's strong commitment, when it comes to strengthening ties between India and Guyana. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be addressing the Guyanese Parliament, which will certainly also strengthen the people-to-people ties. And it's a matter of pride, definitely for both the countries, and also especially for the diaspora population, who will be there and who are eagerly waiting for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And today, when he'll be, addressing the Parliament of Guyana, it will certainly, like I just mentioned, it will strengthen people-to-people ties as well between both the countries and nation-to-nation ties as well. Apart from the very fact, when it comes to other engagements for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, then after addressing the Guyanese Parliament, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be going, he'll be paying floral tribute to the statue of Father of the Nation, Mahatma Gandhi. And after that, there'll be a cultural program, there'll be a community event which will take place here in Georgetown. So all in all, these are the engagements, of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But as far as his address is concerned in the Guyanese Parliament, then certainly a significant moment for India and diaspora here, and certainly shows that how the bond between both the countries is being strengthened, and apart from that, nation-to-nation ties, people-to-people ties will also get a boom, with this address. And also, it goes on to show Prime Minister Narendra Modi's popularity on the global map. The world sees him as a global leader. In fact, President Irfaan Ali also said, appreciated Prime Minister Modi for his leadership.
Yes.
And yeah, definitely.
Yes.
And these are the engagements.
That point about the kind of recognition, we'll specifically talk about Guyana, where they've clearly President Ali calling him the light in the developing world and the champions amongst leaders and all of that. Run us through the kind of recognition or acknowledgement, especially by the Caribbean bloc. You've been there, you've interacted with diaspora, you've interacted with the journalist community there, and otherwise also. How significant is this visit of Prime Minister Modi to that part of the world?
Definitely, Sakal, it's a very significant, and I must say that's a historic visit by Indian Prime Minister. As you also told the viewers that it's first time in 56 years that an Indian Prime Minister has come to Guyana. In fact, it's a very significant visit by Indian Prime Minister for many reasons, because we all know that Guyana is now experiencing transformative growth when it comes to its economy, and in fact, thanks to its booming oil sector. And in this transformative phase, India would want to partner with Guyana. And in fact, as far as the MOUs are concerned, and there is one MOU, which is agreement which was signed between both the countries on hydrocarbons, which is a very important MOU. I was also mentioning about it to you earlier, Sakal, that this particular MOU will certainly strengthen the bond between both the countries. And apart from that, according to this MOU, it will have the crude oil sourcing, the collaboration on natural gas, the capacity building, infrastructure development, and India's expertise in entire hydrocarbon value chain. So this will be a very pivotal moment for both the countries, because both the countries from this particular MOU will definitely benefit in terms of economy, and as well as this will open new avenues for both the countries, collaborate in terms of research and development in this particular sector, which will certainly require skill management. So both the countries, it will certainly benefit both the countries in terms of economy and otherwise as well.
Yes, we are certainly standing by to hear India's Prime Minister when he addresses the special session of Parliament. There, Siddharth, many thanks for joining us in the studio. And Ramesh, I think we should turn over to the guests, and joining us. Joining us in our studio, Mr. Mahesh Sachdeva and Professor Swaran Singh. We would like to tell our viewers, Ambassador Sachdeva is a former Indian ambassador to Algeria and Norway, and a former Indian High Commissioner to Nigeria. He is the author of Nigeria, a Business Manual, published in 2014 and again in 2018. And let me also once again introduce Professor Swaran Singh from Jawaharlal Nehru University. Both of you, thank you very much for joining us. Ambassador, I would like to start with you, Ambassador Sachdeva. So, unprecedented and historic this visit has been in many ways, and if you specifically talk about the kind of reception Prime Minister Modi got the moment he landed, from half of the cabinet, including the Prime Minister and President receiving him, and the statements that have come from the Guyanese side, and today, addressing the special session of the Parliament. What's the kind of signal that the Caribbean bloc wants to send, not only across to their part of the world, but across the globe? But this, I believe, is a keenly watched event.
I think so. I think you are right. There's no denying that it's very important event in not only in bilateral ties with Guyana, but also with our ties with the Caribbean bloc, which is CARICOM is a group of 15 countries formed way back in '73, and India's first foray with them at this level is certainly significant. One would like to say that Indian diaspora is present in most of these countries in large number. Guyana takes the cake because over 40% of population of Guyana is of Indian origin. I think what is significant in this particular particular gesture
Right,
of
sir.
Parliament meeting is to have a across the board connectivity with all sections of Guyanese population.
Right.
In the past there have been some rumbling that India has a partisan attitude towards its own community and to the neglect of the rest of the Guyanese people.
Is it?
So that is being ameliorated.
Was it there?
It is not based on truth or facts, but cultural ties are of course important, ethnic ties are important, festivities etc. do take place, and you can't just say that
Right.
we don't want those to be acknowledged. They are there, but by straddling over and going to the Parliament and being invited to address the Parliament, I think it is something which in a way neutralizes these kind of
Rumblings.
reservations, etc. I would also like to add that these CARICOM countries have their own sensitivities.
Okay.
They lie between North and South America, and very often there is an attempt to push them in one direction or the other.
Okay.
So Organization of American States does not look after their interests so well. Neither are they part of Mercosur or NAFTA or the North America Trade Organization, etc. Their living standards are lower than North American countries. Haiti, for example, has its own problems, even though it's close to United States. Very often they have to straddle over Cuba-America divide, and Cuba's relations with Cuba as a Caribbean country, but it has very specific policies. So they have to navigate that. Apart from that, so by going over and talking to CARICOM in their own right, Prime Minister has acknowledged their individuality as a group,
Yeah.
and encourage them to engage with India.
Right.
And this is something which is very well appreciated, as we saw by giving him highest decorations
Yeah.
for from two countries and citation from the third one. I think it is also required to be said that very often these countries have their own specific challenges vis-a-vis climate change, vis-a-vis connectivity. They are small island countries and connectivity is a problem. But then by giving them appropriate solutions, which India has for them, like digital connectivity, like banking and so on, I think we are being useful to their national development endeavors.
Professor Singh, how and why do you think it's taken India and Guyana 56 years to rediscover each other, as it were? But that said, better late than never?
Absolutely, Ramesh. As you would know, that part of the world was known to be the last frontier of India's foreign policy, which was largely focusing on immediate neighborhood, then extended neighborhood, and then major powers. But gradually, as India has expanded its connectivity around the world, whether it is Western Pacific Island states or it is Caribbean states, now India is reaching out to the rest of the world in any case. Guyana becomes a particularly interesting decision to pay that visit, because that would symbolize the kind of transformation that is happening inside India and in Guyana, and of course in the bilateral relations. As we know, by 2015 they had discovered about 11 billion cubics of oil and gas, of course, and India is the second largest importer of oil, and of course ONGC already partners in Vietnam, in Russia and so on. So there is a complementarity in pure economic interests. Then of course the whole connection that we have had historically for about 100+ years of Indians going there in last century, last to last century, 19th and early 20th century. And nostalgia again, other than the economic crude interests, nostalgia that works, and the whole new imagination about India going to be the third largest economy. The world has very different expectations from India, and top it up with Prime Minister's personal, very hyperactive but very personal way of connecting with leaders, which generates enormous goodwill. And I was particularly impressed with the whole list of various leaders of India having addressed legislatures. We need to underline that this is a special session convened for Indian Prime Minister's speech in Guyana. It's not a session of Parliament where Indian Prime Minister is going to speak. And address to legislatures is a very important way of connecting with the local political elite. Because over the coming years, maybe some of them will change positions, but more or less, the new Prime Ministers, the new ministers or the former Prime Ministers, etc., would more or less constitute that political elite which will be engaged by Prime Minister, not just in the formal speech. I assume after the speech, the kind of pleasantries exchanged, hugs given and so on. That goodwill with the political elite goes in a long way in connecting India to many of these nations. And now as India begins to focus on global issues and becoming voice of global south, these interactions are increasingly becoming important, because if India wants to make certain reformations in global governance, then each of these votes matter.
Yes.
When India speaks in UN, then that number becomes very significant support base for India.
And sir, if you remember, we were on the special broadcast yesterday, Ramesh, when we had those statements coming from both leaders, and towards the concluding remarks, Honorable Prime Minister spoke about how and on what areas India and Guyana, or the two leaders, are on the same page. Which specifically he spoke about the reforms of the multilateral institutions, and I think that's the message, and climate financings. Ambassador Sachdeva, how do you see that? India's calibrated approach to aggressively engage more with the so-called global South nations, and like Ramesh pointed out, 50 plus years it took for an Indian top leader to actually land there. And not only, there are 10 important MOUs that have been inked. So India consolidating its alignment with global South will have a wider ramifications considering what is happening around.
I think we are going beyond rhetoric.
Okay.
And we are going beyond palliatives. We are getting into substantial relationships, and this is very, very significant. Hydrocarbon, you mentioned, there's complete complementarity between us and Guyana, despite the distances. We are one of the big importers from Venezuela, for example, which is neighboring to Guyana. We want to diversify our sources for energy security, and Guyana, which has more than $1 trillion worth of oil and gas, is obviously a good candidate for us. I think we can also complement Guyana's own development processes.
We have been doing that.
But now that they are suddenly flushed with money, there are many takers, and very often due diligence, due governance, and needs to come up with, and they need to trust people who would give them the right advice and not take them to cleaners. And I think India has a very significant role in this regard. We are well established.
So we're making the right moves.
As a soft power, as a global South power, which has given examples for sustained development of society despite multi-ethnicity, despite multi-religious sort of situations, and we have no hidden axes to grind. So that is something which comes naturally. Secondly, I think not only Guyana but many other CARICOM countries are vulnerable to climate change. you have known about how cyclones have become more common in this area, including United States, Mexico, Cuba and rest of it. Now, this is a manifestation of global warming and climate change, and ameliorating strategies, climate defying agriculture, etc., industries and so on have to be put together, and India is can be a good fit for that quest. Those apprehensions about being submerged due to rising level of seawater, etc., can come in. I think pharmaceuticals, agriculture, let's not forget that this indentured labor went for sugarcane cultivation from India, from eastern UP and Bihar, and they predominantly work in that area. So our agriculture is an example of feeding 1/5 of humanity without relying on imports, and that is a good fit for these countries when they want to achieve sustainable agriculture.
Right.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, we are just moments away from the Prime Minister's address to a special session of Guyana's Parliament. So my next question is addressed to the both of you. You, Professor Singh, as a teacher of diplomacy, and you, Ambassador Sachdev, as someone who has practiced diplomacy in your illustrious career. What goes into the making of a speech such as this, where the Prime Minister addresses lawmakers of a foreign country? I ask you this because I remember the 2015 US Congress speech, where this memorable formulation, overcoming the hesitations of history, was spoken, and that set a new trend, as it were, in speech writing or speech making, as it were. So either of you, whoever wants to
Ramesh,
go
there are
first.
few things that go into writing of a speech. Basically aiming to connect and stay in the memories of people in that sense. So whether it is the phrases that are used, sometimes there are acronyms that are introduced, and sometimes you have to use colloquial language, a phrase or a sentence or a word, fundamentally aiming to connect. But at the same time, in the same speech, you should also create hope. That is very significant, that not just nostalgia, but also creating hope and confidence that the relationship with this specific country is going to be beneficial for the local elite and local people in that sense. So we have seen several of the phrases and sentences that Prime Minister has used elsewhere become the buzzword either in media or by subsequent other international leaders who use those kind of expressions in their speeches. And that is what makes it memorable in that sense, and if it is memorable, it is impactful in that sense.
Ambassador Sachdev, from an MEA perspective, as someone who has seen and worked in the corridors of power, as it were, what goes into the making of such a speech that we are going to witness in just moments from now?
I think Professor Singh has said it all very eloquently, but let me add, connecting with the audience is a very important part, particularly when you are coming from halfway around the world. Relevance to their own self-imagery is important as well. Prime Minister uses the local greetings whenever and he can, and that connects with people in multiple myriad ways. He is folksy, and he has a way of politicizing his speech in the right way, mixing it with India's own accomplishments and making it relevant to the local requirements. It's another constant theme for his success in such deliberations. And I believe coming up with crisp slogans, acronyms, as Professor Singh said, and buzzwords is something that makes him popular with the political elite of the country. They look forward to hearing from him and believe that he brings the typical Indian way of joining them in their own quest for bilateralism, going more than half the way to be with them without being overbearing, because it can when you're talking to Guyanese who are less than 1 million population, and if you hype about 1.4 billion people, it can go sort of in a different direction. It can overawe people.
Right.
He doesn't do that.
Like talking to an audience rather than talking down to an audience,
Exactly,
like treating them as
exactly.
equals.
Not being too assertive about India's accomplishments,
condescending.
etc.
Yes.
But making them, and condescending as well, but making the connection at the level that the audience would like you to be. So going more than halfway, as I said earlier, is his mantra for success.
Professor Singh, would you like to add that
I
Prime
think
Minister's
I missed adding the body language,
Okay.
which is also very significant in how a leader is perceived, and the confidence that oozes, the warmth that oozes in any leader.
And that's very naturally, it's coming
Yes.
across very naturally. You just go back to Nigeria. The kind of bonhomie that you witnessed,
Yes.
right, agreed that they met last year, 2023 September, the Nigerian president, and then of course with President Ali. Fine, he was in India during
Yes.
Pravasi Bharatiya, but the kind of body language and Prime Minister's personal connect. I mean, you talk business also, you talk diplomacy also, but that connect, that immediate connect that Prime Minister manages to strike with them.
And the way he keeps mentioning of India's civilizational philosophy of world is one family. So he invariably goes there as a family member. At least that is the attempt from Indian side, from the Prime Minister's side, to connect with people not as politicians but as real friends. And that kind of body language, eye contact, gestures, hug diplomacy, sometimes we call it, really leaves enormous impression, and indelible memory in that sense of people who meet any great leader in that sense. That connect, that leaving a mark on somebody's memory, I think that is very significant, and we will see again that being repeated in this case as well.
And if I may just quickly add, Ambassador Sachdev, does personalities matter in diplomacy? In other words, Prime Minister Modi is one who invests a lot of time, energy and effort into establishing a personal rapport with world leaders. Does it help diplomacy in further India's interests?
No question about it. It does help. Eventually, it's not an equation with numbers.
True.
It is interpersonal connections. It's interpersonal understanding which goes the final mile and clinches a particular argument together. It's diplomacy is, as some wag says it, it's to persuade other guy that thinking your way is in his own interest, and if more subtly it done, better it has the results. So I think Prime Minister has a way of doing those things.
And sometimes personality is also defined in a rather simple fashion as to how many people feel personal with you. In that sense, they think they can share confidential things with you. So great personalities touch lives of millions of people in that sense, and that is what diplomacy requires, connecting and warmth, so that then you can pursue your national interest. And invariably, as Ambassador was saying in his speeches, there are examples that come from India of what we have done, what we have already demonstrated, and then from that perspective offering partnerships with other nations. And it is important to understand that yes, a small nation of about 8 lakh people vis-a-vis 140 crore people, and that is where the familial connections, the historical, civilizational, cultural, religious connections make it feel like equal, because in that sense the familial relationship doesn't give you sense of the big brother being
Right.
problematic. Big brother is someone who's benevolent, and if that is the projection any diplomacy professional or a politician is able to make through, definitely facilitates creating environment such where India's interests would be pursued far more easily in that sense.
What is really expected in the light or in the context of the statements yesterday from both leaders when Prime Minister addresses the special session of Parliament today? What do you think he would be talking about, Professor?
I think apart from
likely areas.
I think there are already 10 areas on which agreements are signed now. So some of those areas would be in conversation during the speech. They will be mentioned that we have already decided to take forward our relationship in those directions. I also assume issues of the Caribbean region would be part of the speech because we just had the second India-CARICOM Summit meeting. And then of course, what are the issues at the global level that India thinks need to be addressed and how India views as to how they can be addressed, how, for example, multinational banks or international organizations, issues of climate change, pandemics, terrorism and so on, challenges that are shared challenges, challenges that worry these Caribbean states as well, and giving that sense of shared opportunities but also shared challenges that we face and how it requires working together. And that I think is an expectation from a speech that Indian Prime Minister is likely to give. I am sure he'll really cover all of these areas.
Just to add to what Sakal was asking, Bas Sachdev, do you think India would also be trying to project or send out a message to the world at large that this is how a growing power should be behaving on the world stage, adopting a more collegiate style of diplomacy rather than a mercantilist kind of approach to diplomacy, which we've seen practiced by some countries in our neighborhood as well?
I think so. I think what differentiates India from many other transactional diplomats, including, you know, who one is talking about, is that we do not differentiate between Kathani and Karmi, as they say in Hindi. What we do is what we preach.
We walk the talk.
We walk the talk. And that is something which needs to be, which gets appreciated. I think Prime Minister is going to focus more on what Guyana expects from us, and then in his own subtle way he is going to show that we are the best fit, be it agriculture, be it resource related development, marshalling certain resources that they have got to the right content. Let me say this, Guyana's GDP grew 62% in 2022.
That was the fastest at that point
in the world.
Globally, yes.
Because of sudden discovery, flush of oil. It grew by 32% last year. And this kind of growth is enough to submerge countries in sort of outlandish expectations of the people. Suddenly, it's easy to be rich, it's easy to afford things, let's
and
import,
you attract a lot of global
everything.
attention.
Yes.
So you could have a problem of plenty.
Exactly. You can import everything.
And also for a country that swears by Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, meaning world is one family, India's help comes with no strings attached, right?
Ramesh, you would have noticed Prime Minister's speeches many a times have mentioned presenting India to the world as Vishwamitra.
Yeah.
So the approach of presenting India as a friend of the world obviously puts us in distinction from more mercantilist approach of I won't avoided China or more transactional approach of United States. For example, all of these countries, remember, India sent 300 million vaccines during pandemic.
Yes.
And compare it with developed nations who had resources but often were reluctant to share. So with those demonstrations of what India can deliver and then the vision which makes India apart from either China or United States is something that is a very calibrated gradual effort to present India as a different country
this
compared
whole
to others.
paradigm, Ambassador Sachdeva, that we are not really restricting ourselves or marketing or fashioning ourselves as the leader of the global south, but more of a friend of a global south, as pointed out by Professor Singh. Do you think, or how do you see this? There has been a concerted effort by the leadership to tell the world that India is a friend, and we are not interested in that big brother approach under the current leadership.
That's right. And I think there are many claimants for the role of leader of the global south. Some would like to push money into your palms. Some would like to give outlandish promises of manna from heaven to you, delivered. Some are ideologically inclined, and so on. And there lies our uniqueness. We do not have an axe to grind, as I mentioned. We share a lot of values which are consensual: democracy, multi-ethnic ethos of countries, freedom of expression, constitutionalism, developmental status, and sustainability of the environmental issues, and so on and so forth. Technical solutions which may be adaptable to situations in various parts of the world. I think all these make us very unique as a poster child for developing South, and I think it does get noticed.
And as a bridge between global North and South, how do you see India's image coming up?
That is also part of the uniqueness that we have. We are fifth largest economy. We are net importer of a lot of raw materials. We are going to be driving the demand for oil between now and 2040 in the world.
Okay.
We are the only big economy that is still going to claim more resources, while others are either saturated or are declining into in usage of these kind of things. So all that put together makes this global South interested in us because we share some similarities, and we do have complementarities which are away from the capitalist, multinational driven role models.
Okay.
We are into market forces, but we want to respect sovereignty of the individual countries over their resources, and we want to have sort of value addition done on their soil for Indian market. We a couple of years ago offered duty-free access to all LDCs of Africa, for example, which is quite unique.
Okay.
So all these things
Right.
get us in that complementarity and similarity hyphenation, and I think we are quite favorably placed.
Like to call it a right fit.
Indeed.
Yes.
Like Professor Singh, while we are still waiting for the Prime Minister's much anticipated address to a special session of Guyana's Parliament, may I also ask you for your thoughts on the Indian diaspora? Now, why I ask you this question is because the Indian diaspora, the Indo-Guyanese, form a major chunk of Guyana's population as well as across the Caribbean islands as well. Do you think the Indian diaspora are a model citizen in that they assimilate themselves well into any society, integration, they're industrious, and they are part of the solution, not the problem?
Ramesh, you reminded me something that Jawaharlal Nehru had said to the overseas Indians when India became independent. And I remember initially in this discussion, the mention was made how India's approach to overseas Indians was and how this has changed over a period of time. So when India became independent, we had about nearly 500 plus principalities and kingdoms and 2 dominion states. This was the feeling around the world of several people of Indian origin who had gone to different faraway places during the British as indentured labor mostly, that maybe this is the time to come back. You know, there are books written about how many Indians thought they need not buy railway tickets anymore, this is now Indian Railway. In that situation of facing enormous internal chaos, and we were still to go through the consolidation that Sardar Patel produced later. That is the message, exactly your words, the message that Jawaharlal Nehru had given to people of Indian origin living around the world, that at this moment you should continue to assimilate and live and be industrious and faithful citizens of the places where you are. And this is not necessary for you to rush back to the motherland just because India has now become independent. That mindset changed from Atal Bihari Vajpayee's time, that we wanted to reconnect with Indian diaspora, and last 10 years have of course seen fantastic usage, starting with Sushma Swaraj, for example, putting overseas Indians on top of her Twitter. Yes. And that connection with Indian overseas has produced something which is ahistoric. True. Never in history a foreign leader's name has been chanted the way people do Modi, Modi wherever he goes. Sometimes they are in thousands and sometimes they are in hundreds. Nowhere else you can see this example. So this connection with Indian diaspora, and Indian diaspora now increasingly feeling proud about that identity of being an Indian or of Indian origin, is going to be an enormous leverage for India, and India understands this, and I think foreign policy people who are practicing foreign policy are using that.
Yes, sir, so in your experience, I mean, what's the kind of shift that you have witnessed in the last decade or so under Prime Minister Modi? The whole diaspora dimension to the foreign policy vision of Prime Minister Modi and his diplomatic capital, the personal capital that he brings to the table, we spoke about that connect, and particularly in connects, because we are talking about India-Guyana. We're looking at about 40% of the population there, which is of Indian descent. So diaspora there playing a very important bridge role between the two countries, and overall the diaspora dimension that I'm asking. 2 parts to this question.
I think new paradigms have been set. Wherever Prime Minister goes outside India, there is an autonomous engagement with the diaspora.
Yeah, it's like a permanent fixture in the
exactly.
calendar.
And not only that, but wherever Indians or Indian diaspora gets into trouble, be it Sudan, be it Gulf and elsewhere, be it Ukraine, every possible effort is made
to bring them back
yes. to come to their rescue, whichever way. So it's not just photo op that
Yemen,
even if,
like
even if Ms. Swaraj said, even if you are stuck on the moon, India will
absolutely. In fact, let me add here, you know what is the largest commodity India exports to Guyana? Spices. That means people still there appreciate using Indian way of cooking, Indian masalas. Yes. Hopefully things will change in coming times because they will have greater purchasing power soon. But that shows the connection of cuisine, of rituals, of rites, of all kinds of things that connects India to Guyana, which is a very young population, by the way. That also gives enthusiasm, a lot of new money coming with young people, and so the Guyana itself is very excited about doing things with the world. But they also see, let me add this point, since mention of curse of resources was mentioned briefly, Venezuela has an eye on these resources and they claim those territories, and therefore Guyana sees India as a stabilizing force. If India develops stakes in exploring those oil fields and ONGC goes there, it adds to their comfort level vis-a-vis a big neighbor Venezuela.
Okay. You can finish your point. You were talking
Yes,
to that.
I think as they say in physics, when you observe a thing, the thing itself changes.
Okay.
Heisenberg's uncertainty principle to me. The Indian diaspora has been evolving. How many of multinationals are chaired by Indian diaspora? How many of the multi-billionaires are among the diaspora? And some calculus, there are more Indian billionaires living outside India than in India.
And adding to their respective countries' economy.
Exactly.
They're integral part
Exactly.
of the whole, the movers and shakers, if I may put it that way,
Yes.
of that particular foreign land.
Culturally, cuisine-wise, sports-wise, Indian diaspora has been excelling
Forced
at
to
various
recommend, true.
places. And by ingratiating ourselves with them, we do not only encourage them, we encourage the people back home in the same category to look at them as role models and create a set path which can be used, and best practices are very often copied back.
Sure.
Right, Ambassador Sachdeva, Professor Singh, do stay on. We'll come back to you momentarily. In the meantime, Sakal, let's pull up some more news for our viewers.
Sure.
Prime Minister Modi on Wednesday outlined 7 key pillars of cooperation between India and Caribbean nations as he participated in the India-CARICOM Summit in Georgetown, Guyana.
Absolutely, and Prime Minister proposed that the acronym CARICOM, which stands for Caribbean Community, could be reinterpreted as a framework for a 7-pillar program which is aimed at deepening and consolidating collaboration between India and the Caribbean countries. Take a look.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Wednesday proposed 7 key pillars to strengthen ties between India and CARICOM as he participated in the India-CARICOM Summit with Deccan Michel, Prime Minister of Grenada, the current chairman in Georgetown, Guyana. C stands for capacity building. Prime Minister Modi announced 1,000 information technology scholarships and proposed expanding the technology center that India is establishing in Belize to include all CARICOM members. A stands for agriculture and food security, where India suggested sharing its agricultural technology advancements such as deploying drones. R signifies renewable energy and climate change. Prime Minister Modi invited CARICOM nations to join initiatives spearheaded by India, including the International Solar Alliance, among many others. I represents innovation, technology and trade, which aims to extend India's technological advancements such as UPI to member countries. C stands for cricket and culture. India proposed using cricket as a tool for women empowerment by offering 11 scholarships to each CARICOM nation for women's cricket coaching. O denotes ocean economy and maritime security. India offered to assist in developing Caribbean nations' resources, enhancing regional connectivity through cargo ships and supporting security initiatives against piracy and others. M stands for medicine and healthcare. India prioritizes healthcare in CARICOM nations and offers affordable solutions through its Jan Aushadhi scheme. The Caribbean community, that is CARICOM, has been an important platform for deepening India-Guyana relations as they cooperate across international fora. Prime Minister said that cricket is an important link between India and the Caribbean nations and proposed training women cricketers of these nations.
क्रिकेट हमारे देशों के बीच एक बहुत बड़ा और महत्वपूर्ण कनेक्टिंग लिंक है। इस वर्ष आपके यहां हुए T20 वर्ल्ड कप से भारतीय क्रिकेट फैंस का कैरेबियन की ओर आकर्षण और भी बढ़ा है। और यह मैं सिर्फ इसलिए नहीं कह रहा हूं क्योंकि भारत ने ये विश्व कप जीता था। मेरा प्रस्ताव है